Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Mukund Kumar, and I am the founder and CEO of My Mentor Academy. I'm here with my friend and, dare I say, equal Bhakti Shah, Director of Outreach at Illinois Tech. And we are joined also virtually by Megan Stetson, who is Academic Director and my mentor and former Harvard Admissions Officer, and Jesse Hill, who's the former Associate Director of Admissions and Undergraduate Dean at Yale for College. And so we'll jump right in, and really what we're here to talk about is why schools need to formally start assessing, certifying, and teaching human intelligence skills, because of the rate that AI is actually progressing. And this is important. It's not just about talk, it's about action. And so we'll jump right in. Thank you all for coming bright and early. I know an 8:30 session is pushing the boundaries here, but we'll keep this interactive and let's try and bring that moon landing level energy. All right, so let's do it. Bhakti, over to you. You can take it away.
All right, good morning, guys. Seeing many of you again since yesterday. So how are you all feeling? All good? How's the conference been so far? Good? Okay, great. So I have a little bit of a challenge, which is that when I am speaking, I get easily distracted. So I request the phones to be on silent. I request no conversations to be happening when we are having the presentation. If you're on a call, you can step out of the room and then come back in. All right. It's just basic because otherwise I can't focus. All right. I want to start by asking you guys a question. If you were to describe the world that you live in one word, what would it be? One word. Yeah. Dynamic. Technology driven. Okay. What else? Changing. All right. Evolving. Uncertain. Yes. Challenging. Absolutely. What else? Overwhelming. Absolutely. So all these adjectives, right? When I ask this question to 14 or 15-year-olds, they use words like weird, miserable, depressing, harsh, competitive, which is really, really sad to hear. But that's the world that they think they live in. And when I ask you guys, usually this age group, the usual thread of thought is about uncertainty, which is true. The world is uncertain and therefore the future is very, very unpredictable. If the future is unpredictable, how do you prepare students for a future that you don't even know what it's going to be like, right? How are you going to do it? Any thoughts on that? How are you going to prepare students for a future you don't even know? Yeah. Make them agile, make them adaptive. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I think helping them have the transferable skills. So whatever the future might bring, they'll be able to use those skills too.
Absolutely. The key word here being skills, right? Very quickly, we all know the reason, we all know the need for skills. But let me just re-emphasize that whatever you're thinking is also validated by the World Economic Forum. Everyone's heard of the World Economic Forum. You've heard of the Future of Jobs report? All right. So the Future of Jobs report is released every year. And it was released once again this year in 2023. And this year's report, essentially, the survey covered over 800 companies that employ 11 million people in the world. Okay. And the spread of industries and economies covered is very, very vast. So be rest assured that this survey is as comprehensive as it gets. And what this survey really found and talked about are two major things. One is, of course, the trends that lead to job growth and job losses. And for the first time ever, this survey integrated a skills segment, which Mukund is going to talk about more. I'm just going to leave you with the thought of, if you look at the factors under green, technology, contrary to popular belief, is not going to take away jobs. It's going to create jobs. All right. How many of you know what green transition means? Green transition. What does green transition mean? Come on, apply your mind. Yes. greener practices, sustainability. Okay, so in the context of this survey, green transition essentially means companies that are increasingly introducing jobs that have to do with sustainability. The companies themselves don't have to be in the sustainability sector. They don't have to be energy companies or oil companies. Oil companies are not sustainable anyway, but yeah. But that this is cutting across all domains. So increasingly, no matter what domain you talk about, every sector, every company is going to come up with jobs in sustainability, which is going to lead to a huge boom in job creation. These are the top two factors. Now, given that, and I'm rushing through my slides a little bit because we have a lot of ground to cover in the next 30, 40 minutes, and Jesse, Megan, and Mukund have a lot of value to add. I'm going to leave you with the fact that as a university, and I don't know how many of you attended the Illinois Tech reception dinner, and I represent Illinois Tech. We're a tech school, okay? We're all about how do we make our students future ready? How do we make sure, and by the way, future is not 10 years down the line, future is now. The future is now. And so if you see the title, it's careers of the present. These are not careers of the future. How many of you have heard of these careers? How many of you have heard of one of these careers? Raise your hand. How many of you have heard of more than 3? Okay. Imagine this is a room full of counselors and educators, and we have not heard of these careers. And this is very normal, this trend that I'm seeing right now. I do this workshop or I recreate this slide every year. And every year, the careers that appear on it are completely different. So 6 or 8 months ago when I did this, the careers were completely different. There was something called the AI ethicist, which was very, very on trend about a year and a half ago. It does not figure now because the world has moved on beyond that. There are nuances of AI ethics that have taken other career shapes and domains and titles. So very quickly, what do you think a makeshift structure engineer does? Any idea? Yeah? Yes. In situations like wars, natural calamities, anything that requires an immediate creation of structures for human shelter or just for using, on a day-to-day basis or whatever, right? Not necessarily shelter. This job requires multiple skill sets. It's not just about being an engineer, right? There has to be collaboration. There has to be a lot of analytical skills. There's be critical thinking. There's also a lot of creativity, but empathy too, right? Because you could be working in extremely stressful situations with a lot of people who've undergone a lot of stress. Last example I'm going to give, and the point I'm trying to make here is, every one of these careers is not a result of a degree. It's not. It's a result of 2 things: multiple domain knowledges, but also multiple skill sets. The last career that I'm going to give an example of is probably an algorithm bias auditor. Anyone knows what an algorithm bias auditor does? All right. The world runs on algo, right? Everything you do on your phone, everything you do on your social media is algorithm. Algorithm is essentially a bunch of calculations that are reading your behavior online. So your searches, so if you, for example, are watching puppy videos on Instagram and you love watching puppy videos on Instagram, Instagram is going to show you more puppy videos. So whatever you consume, it's going to show you more of that stuff. It's the same thing with the internet, like basically Google, right? Google searches, Facebook, everything works on that. Now, this is great if you're only watching puppy videos. But the minute a 14, 15, 20-year-old starts consuming content which might not be entirely appropriate, and we're not just talking about porn, we're talking about antisocial, hate speech, could be anything, right? Who's keeping track of how much is too much? Because artificial intelligence does not have emotional quotient. And that's when you need human intervention. And that's where the algorithm bias audit comes in to ensure there isn't too much of one thing. The applications are many, but imagine the skill set that is required to be an auditor, right? On that note, I'm going to invite my friend Mukund and my equal Mukund.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks, Bhakti, for that introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Mukund here, and I'll just build upon what she talked about a little bit more skill sets heavy. So there are careers, and then there are skills. And then there are skills that impact every career. And that's really what we're here to talk about. And so piggybacking on the World Economic Forum and what they talked about in terms of the top 10 skill sets, regardless of what you want to do for a job. Skills like critical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, motivation, self-awareness, empathy. These are all human-centric skills, which probably would not have made this list if AI wasn't growing at the rate it's growing. And so anything that makes us human is growing in value. But if I take 100 students in any institution, any school, any university, ask them, what is your level with every one of these things? How have you been growing this? What's the trajectory? There's no standard. That's the problem. That's why we're here today, is to see how we can formalize this into education at scale, not just 10 or 20 kids, the entire school. And so we've been doing that. This is, I'm sure you've all heard of ChatGPT at this point. It's not a foreign word, it's out there. So it's living the Indian dream, right? This is literally the Indian dream in many, many cases. Get a 99.99%, go to IIT, go to Harvard, go to MIT, blah, 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 work at Google, make a bunch of money. It's already doing that. And that's scary because we're looking at version what, 3, 4 today. When a 14-year-old enters the job market in 8, 10 years, version 50 is not going to be your friend, or it might be in some cases, maybe not in others. And so even by its own admission, human creativity and problem solving is difficult to replicate. So that is really what students and schools and institutions need to focus on. Academics will be important. Hard skills are important. We're not saying they're not. But if you're spending today, let's just say 90% of your time on coding and math and academics and 10% on everything else, shift that slightly. Or become more organized so you can get 110% out of yourself. That's what we're saying. And that's what's really, really key. Now, again, not sure if a lot of you knew this. India's already second on the list for ChatGPT usage. And it's barely come out 6, 7, 8 months ago. Once the price drops, it's going to be #1. It's #1 for YouTube, #1 for Instagram, #1 for Quora. So this country is probably most at risk when it comes to adoption of AI at scale. Within institutions, careers, corporates, doesn't matter. So everybody needs to get with the program because it is coming and change must happen. What we did, we also asked ChatGPT the same question. Because of you, what's going to matter? What skill sets are going to rise in importance? There we go. Critical thinking, creativity, digital literacy, emotional intelligence, problem solving, adaptability, as someone said earlier. These are the broad skill sets that the AI is telling you is going to matter because of the AI itself. No, totally fine. And we're jumping on. How does this actually look for university admissions? This is where I'm going to invite my colleagues, Megan, and co-speakers, Jesse, to speak more. So Megan, at this point, if you want to share your screen, jump right into it. They'll give you insights on how it links to university admissions and beyond. Because again, we're all counselors here in many ways. So it's just probably something you're curious about. Megan, take it away.
Thank you, Mukund. And nice to be with you all. I am zooming in from the evening time in Colorado in the States. So I hope you're all having a lovely morning over there and wish I could be there in person with you. But yes, thank you, Mukund, for the intro. So I would like to speak to these same set of human skills, character skills, from the perspective of a holistic university admission officer, which both Jesse and I have held the position of for several years. So here on this slide, you can see how these increasingly important human skills show up across different artifacts in holistic university admissions. So on the left, you'll see this same list from the World Economic Forum output as the top 10 skills of 2023. Plus, we actually also added in a few more skills to that list that were taken specifically from research into what holistic university admission officers are looking for in terms of skills in their candidates, which has a huge overlap with the World Economic Forum and just a couple additional ones. So along the top of this slide, you'll see the different artifacts that admission officers are looking for in holistic review. So of course, the transcript and tests, the student's extracurricular activity list, and then their essays, their letters of recommendation, and interviews if it's applicable. So I want you to, with your eyes, kind of zoom out into a bird's eye view. This slide has a lot of detail in it, but I want you to zoom out and look at the pattern here, which is in the essays and letters of recommendation line, every single character skill, every single human skill can be captured through these two artifacts. So we're gonna focus for a moment on the student essay. That is what the student has kind of the most control over, and that they're responsible to create for their application. So we can think of the college entrance essay then as a final exam of sorts in the area of human skills. Holistic university admission officers, and again, I can tell you this from my time as one, are scanning through these essays for evidence of the student's character, what their human skills are, and what their personal qualities are. So on this side, we've been a little bit pithy with the college essay questions. So what we've done here is we've placed in bold a few different, four specifically common application essay prompts, the title of the character skill that the question is really asking about, to make the point here that these prompts are really directly asking and probing into the student's human skills. So for example, on the top left, the Common App main essay prompt here, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? This question does not in any way on the Common Application have the words critical thinking listed on it or near it. So what we've done here is we've sort of made it obvious that is exactly what this question is asking. So students' ability to learn what all of these character skills are, what the World Economic Forum list is, to develop those skills, and then also to learn to reflect on them and write about them and communicate how they're showing these in their lives, are crucial for holistic university review. And it doesn't end there. Holistic university review is a bit of a microcosm, as we know, for that student's future in terms of internship and job applications along their career over the course of their life. So I am going to pass you off now to my colleague, Jessie, who will continue the holistic university review conversation.
Hi, I'm delighted to be with you from Connecticut in the States. And I want to zoom in a little bit more talking about the mindset of admissions officers as we review applications. And I've been in an Ivy League admissions committee room as recently as March of this year. So I can give you a current lens on this, which is that they are looking to understand students' self-awareness. And one of the signature ways that that is exhibited is by understanding how students get things wrong and then internalize some of those lessons and show their growth process in their personal statement. So that sense of reflection and time spent learning from one's experience is often showcased really well through admission of getting something wrong, which is not always what we're taught. We think that these are opportunities to be almost boastful, where you're ticking down the list of all of your resume skills. Not so much in a US holistic admissions review. They really want to understand how a student is internalizing experiences and then projecting forward into their future objectives and what they want to get out of college. The other thing I want to highlight here, while the Supreme Court affirmative action decision doesn't give direct impact internationally, I think it's worth noting that many US universities are revamping some of their personal statement prompts and they will want to be asking about family, cultural background, and impact. That won't be the case for every student's story, but it is worth noting that that question will come up more often. And it's another opportunity for students to think about how their cultural background will add to the mix on a dynamic and diverse college campus. So here is an example of a real college applicant who did well in the admission sweepstakes. And in addition to the core academic profile, which of course needs to be strong, we're not spending time on that today, but as Mukund noted, we know that the hard skills are still important. But I want to highlight a couple of things here. One of them, so this is a student who has disparate interests in majors. One is STEM focused in computer science and one humanities focused in film studies. So the student took the opportunity in their interview to kind of delve into this dual interest and have a little bit of fun with it, be a little bit lighthearted about it, talking about coding, talking about horror films, seeing how those two interests marry together. In their personal statement, they focused on a different aspect of themselves. They weren't sort of highlighting the same theme on every part of the application. In the personal essay, they used food as a metaphor to talk about culture, to talk about family experiences internationally. And you really got a sense of the kind of authentic personality of the student through their personal statement. You got another authentic lens in the interview, but highlighting different areas. And then this is a student who was involved in several extracurriculars, but we talk these days about the pointy shape of a successful applicant, where there are some key areas where they've shown leadership or they've shown entrepreneurial zest and spirit. And all of these also have some sense of collaboration, some awareness that they're not just writing everything in an I statement, but are aware that they are collaborating with their peers, that they are propping up their peers, that they look forward to collaborative work in their college enterprises. Most colleges really prize those collaborative skills in the classroom, in extracurricular activities as well. So this student did well and was able to highlight different aspects of their personality through each of the documents over which they had control in the process.
Great. Yes, thanks so much, Jesse, for that. Can we toggle back to the PowerPoint, please, on here? Because now I will take it away. Thank you, Megan and Jesse, for sharing your thoughts. And so they come with a lot of experience. They've looked at tens of thousands of students, made decisions on who's a yes, who's a no. And it's not really about getting into Harvard. I mean, that's fine. You can aim for that. But I think so often people put that on a pedestal. Their entire self-worth is tied into whether IIT is going to admit me or Stanford or Yale. That's not the point of this. The point is that there are a core set of values and characteristics that a competitive student in any nature should be building. And that's what I'm going to delve into a little bit more. These are the skill sets that we believe for today you have to build in unison. It's not one or, these are compounding skills. So if we look at the intrapersonal skills, a lot of you would have heard of these. Skills like goal setting, time management, critical thinking, self-awareness. But none of these skills can be built without the other. How can you be self-aware if you're not a critical thinker? And if you're not how can you be a critical thinker if you're not organized with your time and effort? And if you're not self-aware, how can you be empathetic towards somebody else? If you're not empathetic towards somebody else, how can you be a good leader? If you're not a good leader, how can you, be a good collaborative organization? Every one of these tied. They're compounding skills. And so we've developed and looked into really a way of these skills working in unison with each other. Let's look into how that actually works. So it's an adapted Bloom's taxonomy. A lot of you have heard of Bloom's taxonomy. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Yes. Oh, you want to go back to that one? Sure. Okay, go for it. If folks want to take pictures, I'll leave it on for another second. Great. So moving on. So we're looking at a three-step process here. Number one, can you define these skills in your students? If you take 100 students and tell them, hey, what do you think critical thinking is? Are you going to get some kind of conformity like you get with define the Pythagorean theorem? That's number one. Number two is, can you identify these skills in the real world? You know, if you save your friend's dog, that is applying a lot of these skill sets. If you do well in academics, a lot of these skill sets. So identify how it shows up and in students' lives. That's the second step. Finally, reflect upon it. Have you applied it? Have you not applied it? If you have not, why? Ask yourself the burning questions. And once students get into the practice of doing these three things, we've seen some amazing results in their learning and development over time. This is an example of how we take a critical skill such as self-awareness. We heard Jesse talk about it. It's an important part of university admissions. It's an important part of interviews, getting jobs, happiness, everything. You break it up into its component parts. Much easier to understand. Recognizing motivation, taking multiple perspectives. Everybody can get that. And then what you do is you teach them and assess them on every one of these individual sub-competencies, as we call them. And this is what it ends up looking like. If you put students into situational-based assessments, you start tracking how their mind thinks in various areas that might matter to them. Sorry, am I lucky? In this case, you can see the student is part of a school newspaper team. And then, you know, you can read it on the board. I don't have to go through all of it, but again, happens a lot. People will interrupt you, they'll interject. Once you start tracking how students think of reacting in certain situations, you can tie these back in to the various subcompetencies. And then you start on a very, very systematic level, understanding how each subcompetency is evolving. Then what happens is you have them applied in the real world. And this is a real student. And this is how they're saying, okay, I've built my mindset to be self-aware. Here's how I'm applying self-awareness. This is in an academic setting. It doesn't have to only be in an academic setting, but in this case it is. And so you start seeing a sense of development of the student over time in a much more formalized pattern. It's not random, it's not sporadic, it's done in a very, very thoughtful manner. And that has led to, over time, tracking of these skills that we've seen be very valuable, number one, to the student, himself, herself, themselves, but also to the institution. Now, across schools, we're able to say, and be able to actually have tens of thousands of data points every year, every quarter, on how your entire grade, 8 students, 9 students, 10 students, are actually evolving. And so as humans, we go up and down. That's why it's like this. I can know how to be a critical thinker, but I might not apply it well as the situation gets more complex. We need to track that. This is not a point in time assessment. It's not a 99% you're amazing. This is how you're doing over periods of time, over years. And so that's how we've thought about using data to really make sure that the entire institution understands how these skills are being developed at scale across all learners. And these are the data points we've seen in India. It says over 50,000. Now the number is probably closer to 100,000. Across grade 6 to grade 11, across all curricula, whether it's Indian, international, American, doesn't matter. We're seeing similar gaps, but also gaps that can be filled. It's not surprising that as students get older, the average does increase to a certain extent. You have life experiences, you become more aware of yourself, fine. But at the same time, there are very obvious gaps that need to be filled. And for example, goal setting and time management is probably one of the lowest performing skills in the beginning. And it's part of the stereotype, that's one thing, but at the end of the day, it is true. And so while there are gaps, they can be filled. We've seen the rate of learning of students in this generation is through the roof, much faster than when I was in school and when others were in school. So we've seen, regardless of where you start, which is the initial point here, you can grow at a very fast rate if you're given the right infrastructure, the right canvas, the right tools. That's what we care about. We don't care about the absolute score. You care about the rate of growth. And that's currently not being tracked anywhere. So as institutions, if you start doing this, you're really preparing students for that adaptive world that we're going to find ourselves in. And that's the key here. And I just wanted to share one case study of a student. We'll call them a top. I don't love the word, but let's use it. A topper for skills. It's nothing to do with academics on here. So this student did exceptionally well. But if you look at their critical thinking, right, which I know a lot of folks in India like as a skill, on a practical basis, they hit it out of the park. They understand how to use it. I get it. But then you have them define it, and they're unable to tell you the ABCs of critical thinking. And that's the problem. You wouldn't teach a language without teaching the ABCs of the language. You might do exceptionally well in many cases in applying it, but you don't really know what you're applying. And if you don't know what you're applying, then how exactly are you supposed to grow and communicate that to other people? Whether it's institutions, colleges, employers, that's the issue. Is a lot of students have this, and I'm sure in all your institutions, your students have this. But it's about understanding that baseline, giving them the path to grow, and then giving them the language so they can communicate it to other people. And that usually ends up being something like this. So we've been tracking the feedback loop of actual efficacy over time. And number one, we can tell students that their skills have improved. Fine. There's assessments over time. Great. 95% of them, 30 minutes a week. It's not time consuming. In fact, it's the other. Less time, more consistency versus academics, which is more time and just, cramming a lot of stuff. But the more important piece is the second bullet point on here, confidence levels. How confident are students in applying skill sets in the real world? That's the entire game, because I can tell you, you're more empathetic. Hey, I've assessed you. But if you don't feel more empathetic, it's almost useless. So that is where you have to close the loop. You got to start getting student feedback along the way. The teachers play a huge role. The counselors play a huge role. And everybody is part and parcel of this process. And here, at the end of the day, is what ends up being the game changer. So with that, I'll yield. I know that was a good amount of information, hopefully useful to you. If there's questions, I'm happy to take them. Okay, sure. Already one. Could we get a mic back there, please? And I will answer it. We can also get Megan and Jesse to answer it, depending on how relevant the question is. So we'll have to talk. Yes.
Hi, Mukund. Thank you for a wonderful presentation and the other speakers as well. I just want to understand one thing, the data that you have shown,
Yeah.
is it only from the My Mentor? The data, what are the?
Yes, so these are like data points from our assessing of schools across the country and across various regions as
So
well.
what's the target, as in like, what was the size of the population, just for my
Yeah,
understanding?
so it's right now it's close to a few thousand students is what we did it initially with, and each student will generate 50 to 100 data points.
All right, and what was the diversity? Was it India specific or global?
This is the India specific one. There's also a global piece, and it's also broken up by curricula. So we've done it across CBSE, state,
Okay.
Cambridge, IB, and the gaps are similar. The international curricula perhaps is a little bit higher on the average front,
Right.
but we've seen the Indian curricula students grow at the fastest rate.
Great. And was it a specific difference of the region? Is it more urban or did it cover the tier 2, tier 3?
Both, both,
Right.
yeah, both, yeah. But
Just for
again,
me to understand data.
tier 2 and tier 3, the averages are even lower. So in urban, the average is a little bit higher because again, access to information, access to experiences, access to relatives who have gone abroad and seen the world. Tier 2 and 3, it is lower, but again, the rate of learning is still there. So the initial point doesn't really, these numbers, while they're numbers, they don't matter as much as what does the graph look like. And so that's fairly consistent, no matter if it's tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, which is what we're excited about. I think there's another question here as well. Was there a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know further on this same data analysis that
Okay.
you collected. You also had, like, how long period was the study done?
Yeah, so this is over a year, call it 13, 14 months.
Over a year.
Yeah,
Because this assess, and the grade, you said 8th grade mostly, or was that?
6 to 11,
Oh, these are the grades.
yes.
So all parallelly in different schools through the year?
Yes, and some might have started at different points in the year, but the entire thing was done over the course of that 12-month period.
So what is the next level of study you're planning to do to kind of?
Yeah, so look, what we do usually after this is we actually intervene with the schools themselves. So we go into the schools, and this is the starting point. So let me go back to this. So here, on this graph, we are literally at the axis. See the diagram, that's where this data set comes from. Now, tracking this over time is the next goal. What we're doing with schools across the country is saying, okay, we know where we're starting this race, but hey, how fast are students running over time? And what does that look like? So this is again from one school, one student as an example, but that is the next phase, because then we can say, okay, we know where students were, here's how they've grown, and here's the factors that affected that. A lot of the time, it's the school's level of implementation that affects it.
Exactly.
The teacher's level of understanding and the school's commitment to growth that affects it. Students can learn it, but it's that, so we are realizing all the factors, and
Yeah,
that's where the next level.
That was the main, and so I also wanted to check that, so you are committed to continuing this study further? That's
Yeah, of
what-
course,
yeah.
we've been doing it
So
across.
for more years to come,
Yeah,
right? Because it's really not easy.
yeah.
And secondly, even the different schools, how do they define skill level 1, 2, 3, 4? What does it mean?
Yeah, so this, we
can't
have
a
we
common-
have a standardized way of putting students into certain categories, but it's not even about the numbers, right? So we've defined ways through, again, situational based assessments like this, where we put every student into a similar situation. They cannot Google the answers. It's not something you can Google.
Okay.
And then how they think, because schools will do it in a structured, proctored environment. So every student does this. We understand how they think in certain situations. Then every student applies it to their life events. This is where we'll give teachers a rubric to say, okay, here's how you start assessing a student who's applied the skill. Then we start plotting it. The levels, while we have it for structure,
I know, yeah.
over time we get
But-
rid of it. It's only the graph that matters.
Yeah.
It's only the graph that matters because everybody might be slightly different in how they think about assessing.
Yeah.
But the trajectory remains the same if you apply the same concept across the entire student body, right? If the same school is doing it the same way for their 1,000 students, the graph should be comparable to another school who's done it another way across their students.
Right.
And so that's what we care about most.
Right.
Jersey, thank you. Yeah, there's a question here.
Hi, Mukul, thank you. I just wanted you to go back to that, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yes.
So my question is, when I go through this data here,
Yeah.
between 10 and 11,
Yeah.
I don't, not only is there no increase in terms of critical thinking or creative thinking, on the contrary, I see class 10 being literally at par or a little better off in certain areas. Now, there's no 12 there.
Yeah.
Because I essentially deal with 11 and 12.
Got it.
And we are constantly trying to figure out that if these are the 2 years, key years, they're with us before they go to
Mhm.
college, how do we build all of this?
Yeah.
I wanted to understand the jump from 10 to 12 because 10 to 11 is
Yeah.
not seemingly promising.
Yeah. So the reason why we have not done 12 is because when students get into 12, they're right away thinking about college applications. That's kind of like the end. It's almost a little late.
Yeah.
Because you're starting right away thinking about that should be the culmination part of it. So the reason why 10 and 11, it plateaus a little bit because I'll tell you what, as the classes get younger, the percentage, what you don't see here is the percentage of students from the younger grades, 8 and 7, who are on par with some of the top students in 10, 11 and beyond. So as students get younger, their rate of actual information intake and reflection is getting higher and faster. And so the reason why age stops to matter after a point is because, like in life, nowadays, age is not a factor in how quickly you learn. And so it plateaus because there's not a huge rate of change, so far at least, amongst a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old in that
No,
regard.
that's fine. So that's what brings me back,
Yeah.
that it means the class 9, 8 and 9,
Oh, yeah.
those educators become imperative
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah.
they can really push the buttons here.
Absolutely. So eighth is ideal. Now, 6th and 7th is fine too. I suggest you can do it young. But
Yeah.
8th is absolutely the perfect time.
Yeah.
8th and 9th, we call those the 2 foundational years. And 8th is all about the intrapersonal skills.
Right.
9th is about the interpersonal because that's a little bit more nuanced. So those 2 are super important. And if you're in an Indian curriculum school, those are pre-boards, right? Before the board exams. That happens in grade 10. And so what a lot of schools want is to prepare their students for taking those exams. And so once you build resilience, build critical thinking, build time management, they're able to get into that factor better. So 8th and 9th are the key. 6th and 7th can also be a great starting point.
Thank you.
Okay, I see a few questions. Can we get one here and then we'll go there? And if it's for me, great. If it's for the folks online, happy to get them involved as well. Bhakti, obviously, as well if needed. Yes.
Hi, so I just wanted to know, sir, usually whenever we go for a skill-based workshop,
Mhm.
We have given a list of skills that the students need to, have. So I just wanted to know suppose there is one student and there are multiple students with different skill set. So if you're saying there are 6 or 7 skills, so what is good? Like, if I'm having 3 skills or 2 skills, is there any number that minimum these skills are okay to survive, these skills are best and these will excel? So number of skills which a student, even not good in academics, but if they have the skills, they can survive is what I.
Yeah, so I'll take it one step back there it's not binary. So meaning it's not like I have this, I don't have this. Every student has everything in some capacity. The goal is to map what they are relative to each other for the specific student. We don't want to make this, okay, that student is a 99% in critical thinking, you are 70%, so you're a fool and they're smart. We're not doing that, right? What this is mapping everybody to themselves and they're playing their own game, right? And I think that's what's key. So we need to stop thinking about it as you have this, you don't, okay, you have these 3, you're good for life. You have this one, you're not good for life. Everybody's going to need this. I need this, you need this, we all need this forever, right? And so it's about the journey. It's not about the destination or point in time. Does that make sense?
More about the levels and
Of course.
how you have them.
And it's just about growth. Again, we've seen here, like 95% of students achieve skill growth. That means some students might have been here on this chart, right, which is way below, you've seen it. Some students are here, a 15%. What does that even, that means like, oh, you don't know anything? That's not true, because this student ended up here. And then some students who are at 75, 80% ended up at the same point. So everybody can grow, everybody can be a topper. It's about giving them the canvas, not bifurcating students into smart, less smart, and needs help. Sure, there's questions on that side. And I do want to get Megan and Jesse involved as well in some of the questions. And so we'll try and do that. Can you toggle to the Zoom so they're on there as well? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to share, the skills that you share have been categorized as life skills according to WHO.
Yes, sure.
And now that is being followed by CBSE curriculum.
It is.
And we are teaching that in our school,
Sure.
life skill subject. So we tackle these issues from 3rd grade.
Yeah.
So whether it's critical thinking, creative, empathy. So we are somewhere starting that conversation and we are doing that part, we're just starting there, but it's still getting in schools now.
I think yes, NEP is definitely pushing the skill curriculum, but the point here is not whether you're teaching skills. The point is, are you benchmarking? Are you assessing? You have exams after every subject, don't you? How do you know the growth of students unless you assess them? It's about evaluation. It's about where you're right now when you start and where you'll end up at the end of certain interventions. So that is the whole point, that the session is, it's not about are you doing something, it's about how effective it is and what's the impact on the student.
Absolutely. And I'll just add to that, that the fact that schools now are doing life skills makes this intervention a whole lot easier. That is the entry point in a lot of the schools, is we go in, we're saying you have a life skills period, amazing. This is now formalizing, it's easy. Before you had to, speak to the chairman of CBS if you wanted anything. Now schools have it. So you're able to do it pretty easily. So that's the other point. So now we can take it to the next level. So I saw a few more hands here before. Oh yeah, Neil.
So one thing, Mukul, is great to see a lot of abstraction getting also numbered, quantified in this. I mean, this has huge impact also on mental health.
Yeah.
Pulling up from there, I think what I wanted to share was how the skills are actually transcending into attitudes. Because without, like, confidence is essentially an attitude. While you can make it a skill, it begins from a self-belief and self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I think if a student doesn't have that, no matter how much you try to inject in them, it doesn't work. Also that, from my experience that I've worked in schools, there are a lot of students who have a lot of capacity, but doesn't get tapped into data because they are not motivated. They simply do not want to give you right answers, or they do not want to push themselves to be into problem solving situations. So I think one of the great factors in the way, like Bhakti also spoke about being effective, is how this kind of work ensures that you consistently injecting that attitude, and therefore the skills are coming in and making a difference.
Yeah, it's over time, it becomes part of their habits. And I would say, Megan, if you wanted to add anything on the psych side, because she is a therapist as well, so she goes along in mental health and how, so you want to talk about that related to this, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you're very much speaking my language in terms of all of these character skills and human skills also contributing to students' mental health, overall wellness, and sense of balance and happiness and fulfillment. Like all of these things in their lives, all of these skills can contribute to. And I think your question, or the sort of predicament you're posing, is a really astute one, which is, how did these skills become attributes? I agree with Mukund. Part of it is over time. Part of it is intentional development and really giving what are those sub-competencies to the students, and how can they, in a more nuanced way, understand this, what might have seemed like a vague name of a skill that they've never used this word before. How can we really break it down and make it bite-sized and digestible, with really clear sort of action plans and tools for students? I think another really crucial piece to that is the importance of self-reflection and taking time, and Jesse spoke to this as well, having space for failure, knowing that what we say is, fail isn't a four-letter word necessarily. And how can we reframe these things into You know, we all have natural strengths, we all have natural growth areas. And as Mukund was saying, what we want is just over time to continually grow. So thank you for that wonderful question.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Nehal. Yes, I see two more. We'll go back there and then come back to ma'am after.
So I had a question on, the graph isn't always just an upward trajectory
course,
on some of
yeah.
these skills, right? So we work with, students on some of these skills that are much smaller scale than you do, and
Yeah.
it can go up and down, and that can be because of either life events or what's happening at home
Exactly.
or what's happening in school. So how are you trying to track those kinds of things?
Yeah, so what you don't see, because again, this is not a pitch for what we've done,
Yeah.
is within this entire graph, number one, it's a standardized assessing of these skills. A lot of these are linked to life events of the students. So what we call skills-based journaling. So for a student, for example, if this is trending downwards, there's things that might have happened in their lives that they reflect upon that said, you know what, I wasn't able to apply it in an XYZ manner because of something else, which is the key, because emotions impact your ability to really do anything. And so when you start tracking over time, that's kind of the emotional swing we all face. And so it doesn't matter if you go up or down, it's kind of where you end up over time. Even if it's down here, it doesn't matter. Your motivation levels and wanting to grow. So that's how this is done. A lot of these are life events on top of standardized assessments, because I think you need both of those.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. This question here and then question here. Thank you for all these questions. Amazing, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this aspect. I was just bringing in connection to that experiences, overall experiences, the temperament, all that depends on so many factors.
Yes.
And especially for children, it's the significant adults, how are they creating the environment?
Yes.
So, the question is, shouldn't we be starting to assess first ourselves?
Yeah. Of course, yeah. So there's
that's a fundamental thing.
So again, not turning this into a pitch, but prior to doing this everything, we do the teachers first.
Yeah.
We'll intervene with the teachers, saying, because a lot of the school leaders, that's their biggest fear more than the students.
Exactly.
Is, well, yeah, but can our faculty handle it? And I'm like, well, if they can't, it's a problem, right? Shouldn't you be addressing that first? And so we go in with the teachers once teachers feel comfortable. And that's why and again, I cannot make this a pitch, as Ganesh told me. What we try and do is we try and make sure.
Catch you again.
Yes, you can catch me outside of these doors and I'll tell you everything. And so what we try and do is make sure teachers are at that level, at least a baseline level. So as this is happening, they're also subliminally thinking about themselves. And so the institution sees teacher upskilling, student upskilling, and as a result, the institution improves as a whole, which I think is needed. If it's not in the bones of the teachers, it's not going to be in the bones of the students.
Yeah.
And if it's not in the bones, what's the point?
So on the lighter side or heavier side, I would say that.
Yeah, right.
That because you are, I don't know your age, you're young, so I really want to know
Well,
what
not as young as I used
experiences
to be,
you
but-
have gone through that you could really get into this reflection and think of this thing. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, fine. No comments on that. Fine.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, I would also want to, the second point was, there are a lot of contradictions in our environment. Now, we say, okay, yaar, ye sab aana chahiye, all this, empathy, da, 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 da. But the point is, we are assessing them for so many other things. Exam mein ye aaya. So we'll say that in our group, teachers group, it will come, okay, fine, these A+ grade, itne ko mila, mere bachche ko itna mila. What are we reflecting in the end of it?
Yeah.
Somewhere we have something, ye theek hai, but not that deep a priority. The priority still holds all the other things, transcripts and everything else.
Yes.
I think it's really going to take time for us to really change.
Yeah.
It's really not going to be because we have got fired already.
It is true. So part of this, we're almost cheating the system a little bit, is we're tying it, the third bullet point here, to academic scores. So for those who are still in that camp, and again, it's fine, it's absolutely necessary, we start linking these to that. And so now it's easier to conceptualize, okay, why do we need this? Oh, we want to keep boosting their scores. How many hours are there in the day? We cannot put them in tuition for any more. Build what's inside their head, And so we are tracking that as well. And as you can see, parents are telling us, my child is more academically focused. We're seeing obviously students apply skills like self-awareness to an English exam, to any exams. So that's also, so they apply it to all aspects of their lives. Some students care more about academics. These skills are applied there. Some students care more about extracurriculars. These skills are applied. So the students' interests become their curriculum for skills. And when you do it that way, every student is then motivated to improve. That's really what we're getting to the heart of, right? So thank you. All amazing points and happy to chat in more detail. Yeah. And we will, ma'am, we will get to your question as well after, yeah.
Okay, so no, I was just building up from here. Whenever I pitch in my subject, for example, I teach social and cultural anthropology, and it does churn a lot more. If I see the breakdown of the skill set, there's a lot more that the subject actually works on. But the children obviously need to know, will I get a 7?
Yeah.
Okay, so the pitch doesn't start from this is what you'll build, this is your personality, this is what you'll get, resilience, core strength, critical thinking. It always starts from what will I score? So
No.
there are children I'll see who I look at and I say, wow, had they been in this subject, they would have blossomed.
Yeah.
But that's not how they process it.
Yeah, part of that is making this mandatory.
I don't think that these things are reinforced. So while you have a 7 for a math and whatever, do you have children getting recognized in assembly every day?
That's true.
Or
Yeah.
That's what point we're doing that. It's still this.
So, but,
and gratitude and recognition and giving back.
but I want you to,
present a not so well performing failure or maybe a failure in one of the forums, and he talk about maybe one of his achievements that may not be very popular in achievements. What I would suggest, maybe you should come over. Honestly, you should come over.
so I just want to,
My child, my son is in grade 11, and he's such an underperformer in academics. And I represent Illinois Tech as assistant director outreach. Okay, and I know that he will never be able to make it towards the US university, and I don't even aspire. Or what he says is, I want to be a football coach, and I want to do it in India, because in India it's so undervalued. And he said, it's okay, if I don't earn enough money. Or why it was a challenge for me. My boss, my friend, my colleague has helped me, in that journey. I'm so comfortable. So I think we as educators also need to stand by this so tall and strong. And I think then we will see students and parents not really care so much about those 7s on English and mathematics.
And I think just one quick point and we'll get there. Is your point about them choosing what subjects to take? Yes. Okay. So then yes. So in that regard, don't make this a choice. Is math a choice in a lot of the early years? It's not. Is English a choice? If you make skills just part of the bones, you know what? We do skills. So every student is in skills. Then what you start to realize is students can want to get perfect, but it's quite difficult too, because you can't memorize things and come here. So even that, so the way we've done is that mindset of I want to do really well. We have those students. There is a good trend between academic performance and skills performance, but these are genuine, you cannot hack this easily. And in students, look at their friends and come up with answers. That's collaboration. Guess what? That's a skill. So then great, happy, do it. So everything, so that's how we thought about it. And yeah, so that's a good
I just
question.
wanted to add here that what Bhakti was saying, that the evaluation and assessment is very important, and the national curriculums face a challenge there when it comes to the IB diploma program, when the critical thinking or self-awareness or time management is somewhere a requirement of the curriculum also. So when you're making that timeline and students have to submit self-awareness, academic honesty, integrity, and in any subject, you cannot get that 7 or 6 till you. So students are wary about the grades, but it's those grades only that make them critical thinkers, that bring that creativity. So, the advantage that the international curriculum has is that it is inbuilt in their curricula, in their assessment. And also, to what you were saying, sorry, I didn't get your name, it also gives an opportunity to celebrate the low performers, because we have CAS and we have, TOK and things, and there some students are not doing very well, but, they are good. You just see them blossoming as team leaders there, okay? Or the creativity is coming out. So, yeah, so that advantage is there, but that was a very good point that you raised, to celebrate them. And sports is a very good a platform for that. Sports is a,
Amazing.
so to give awards and to celebrate them.
Yes, and ma'am here, I think she's been waiting for that.
Good morning, everyone. I think we could have gone on and on for the entire day. It's a topic very close to our hearts. So what I'll just add on to that before I have my question is, I think we see a spark of change coming in where academics are taking a backseat and other skills are coming up. So my question was a very theoretical one, which is, what is the assessment tool you have used for this study? And is it some standardized tool, or is it work in progress, or do we create our own tools?
Yeah. So again, I don't want to talk about our platform too much, and we can chat offline. But yes, this is, again, Megan, who you heard from, Jesse, they've created this, and it is working across schools. There is a standardized component. There is a component for those schools who want to go in after 1 or 2 years and say, you know what, the situations we want to build for our students could be so nuanced to our cultural, like findings, that you can go in and start creating your own, building off of the skeleton. So that is happening, and we are seeing very promising trends. And one thing I will say on the point of international curricula is this covers Indian and international curricula. I think international curricula makes it a little bit easier to fit in some of these in like a period, but the Indian schools who are doing it find a zero block period, find an activity, and they get it done. And so there are ways across everybody if you really want to do it. It's about the school and the motivation levels on that front. Thank you all for your amazing questions. I know we're at time.
Just one last question we can take.
Sure, great. Yeah, I'm happy to answer. And I'm here all day, and Bhakti is, so we can keep chatting for those interested.
Yeah. Hi. I'm an English teacher. I teach English. Well, as I see some creative stuff that is churned by ChatGPT and AI, I've always been plagued by this question. Why do English teachers stand as mentors in trying to deliver, writers and upcoming writers, and in terms of mentoring? Where do they stand if things come like this?
You want to answer the question? Sure.
Yes.
When you say English teachers, actually, I think every teacher is a language teacher.
Right.
So it's the role of every teacher that, they use the language for developing these skills. They use their curricula for developing these skills. I feel that. And English teachers, definitely, depending on what the board you are following, we think that creativity and critical thinking can come only in English, but it's not that, it can come very well in math also. And yeah,
I'm only speaking with my subject perspective.
All creativity,
Yes, for sure. And just to answer your question regarding an English teacher, what is your worry that English, like writing, is going to be automated? So what's the role of the English teacher in 5 years?
I mean, we can be easily replaced, right?
I mean, look, I think English is second, you're a teacher first. So I think piggybacking of what she said is being a teacher is teaching and really imparting inspiration into students.
Yeah.
Going back to all of this right here, if you look at what some of these are saying, it says, ChatGPT itself says it can't replace human creativity and problem-solving skills. So the reality is everything is rooted in creativity, whether it's a math problem, an essay, regardless. Maybe essays can be written by ChatGPT, fine. But how do you know what to ask it? How do you know how to assess what it's given you? How do you know how to communicate it, sell it? It's all part of it. So teachers are here to stay. I think that's one of the professions I can say fairly confidently is here to stay, right? Because inspiring students, playing in the gray, all of that is super valuable now. The left-hand side of the equation equaling the right-hand side, while it can be automated away, thinking through that is never going to be automated away.
I also just want to add that everything can be learned online, right? Now you don't need teachers, then by that measure, you don't need anyone to teach you anything. You don't need this conference because you can just look up whatever you want online and say but the whole point is all these topics that we're talking about and the insights and the conversation requires human skill. It requires multiple skills. It requires research, critical thinking. It requires conversation, interpersonal skills. It requires so much. So teachers will never be replaced. Never. I don't think. Yeah, if we just send you the deck versus look how amazing Mukund, Jesse, Megan and I are. I mean, just kidding. I just want to end with one point. I also just want to say this, Mukund. we talked about the need for teachers to be first trained on these skills. I think families play a very huge role as
Yeah.
well. And so parents are, I think, should be the next in line, because whatever you study or learn in school can be completely undone if you don't have the right attitudes at home. So that's something worth
Absolutely.
thinking about.
Yes. Yeah, and now the kids are becoming the teachers anyway. Yes, yes. Are we good? That's a wrap? Yes, thank you so much. Amazing questions, amazing discussion. Okay, thanks, Megan. Thanks, Jesse, for joining.